Our next guest has made a career of championing military and veterans issues. He is the recipient of 2 Purple Hearts for wounds sustained in combat while serving as an infantry squad leader in Vietnam. After his Army service, he worked as a talk radio host while using his GI Bill benefits to earn a bachelor's degree in history at the University of Nebraska. Under President Reagan, he was appointed Deputy Administrator of the Veterans Administration, but resigned on principle when the VA's senior leadership wanted to reduce funding for veterans programs and deny Agent Orange claims. He brought his core values of hard work, perseverance, fairness, and dedication to the United States Service Organization, where he served as CEO. As a 2-term senator from Nebraska, he continued to be an unwavering advocate for a strong national defense while insisting that mission, objectives, and exit strategy be clearly established before American troops are sent to war. In 2013, he became the first enlisted combat veteran to serve as Secretary of Defense. His integrity, fairness, and bipartisanship was widely admired in Washington. He issued a member to increase access to military installations for the American Legion and other organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to present the highest honor that our organization can bestow, the American Legion Distinguished Service Medal, to the Honorable former Defense Secretary and Senator Charles T. Hagel.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, and to my friend, not old friend, mature, longtime friend, Commander Helm, thank you, Mike, for what you have done and continue to do for this institution, and to all of our leadership, the American Legion, and all of you who have devoted so many years of your lives to this country and to the American Legion. I am particularly honored to receive this award. As some of you know, Mike knows, my friends here from Nebraska know, that you get 2 drinks tonight. Maybe 3, I don't know how that works, but I come from a Legion family. My father was a 3-time commander of the American Legion post in Ainsworth, Nebraska in the 1950s. My mother served 3 terms as president of the Legion Auxiliary in Ainsworth. This is, I think, my 47th year of being a life member of the American Legion. My brother is. So I am particularly proud of this honor, and I recognize there are so many of you and people across this country, veterans, people who've given so much that deserve it far more than I do. But at one time I was a shameless politician, so I'll accept the award, of course. But again, thank you very, very much. Let me offer a couple of thoughts. First, to again acknowledge what this institution, the American Legion, means to this country. The shaping and the molding that the American Legion has done with our young people, and I see some here, I know they're in the audience, over generations has been very significant. You continue to do that, you continue to expand on that, And I think that's as critical a contribution as any you make. We all know, especially as parents, that's the future. And to continually imbue in our young people responsibility, patriotism, I think, is an easy word to roll off people's lips, but sacrifice is different. And patriotism is about sacrifice, and it's so important that we teach our young people about that. And all the different programs the Legion has done, have been part of, and continues to initiate over the years, really does that in a very special way. So thank you. Second, we are living at an incredible time in the world. I think we all appreciate that, understand that. This is a time when a world order established right after World War II that has lasted about 70 years. And when you look back over that 70 years, it's been pretty successful. Imperfect, problems, issues, conflict, and we still have that today. In some areas, even more exaggerated than we've seen before. But when you look at the long pull of history and how all of this has worked over the last 70 years, the world is better today than it was 70 years ago by any measurement. And I think when we look at measurements of the kind of world we've had and if we've generally been successful in the world, no World War III, no nuclear exchange. Those two issues are pretty important. We kind of today accept that as so what. But as the previous speaker and recipient noted in his remarks here just a few months ago, and the World War II veterans out there, Korean War veterans out there, know that this was not a given. And all the great leaders of the World War II generation that helped shape this new world order, Eisenhower and Marshall and Truman and Adenauer, Schuman, went to their graves concerned about a nuclear exchange and about a World War III. So we've preserved that element of 70 years of relative global peace. Now we've got challenges that are immense. They are different kinds of challenges. We live in a world now that's completely interconnected. We have 7 billion global citizens, all part of a global community, and that global community is underpinned by a global economy. We are seeing a diffusion of economic power around the world at a rate unprecedented in history. We're seeing technology shift and change everything. We're seeing relationships develop and unfold, and past conflict that buried in centuries of conflict, religious conflict, tribal conflict, historic conflict. And it is a time when every leader, responsible leader of every responsible institution in the world, starting with leaders of countries, are faced with an immense array of challenges coming at them all at one time. More uncontrollables than we've ever had to deal with all at once. More unpredictables. As great a country as America is, with all its power, and no one equals this by any measurement. Doesn't mean we're better people, but we've got something very special that we've been able to preserve for a long time. And the world looks to us in a very special way. We can't solve every problem. We certainly can't do it alone. But what we can do is what these wise leaders after World War II did, as they built these coalitions of common interest, NATO, IMF, World Bank, United Nations, dozens of these institutions that brought people together based on a common interest. Imperfect, differences of opinion. We, the United States, have and continue to have, will have had differences with our strongest allies. That's okay. But the common interests are critically important for our future. In a world that's going to get more complicated, a world of 7 billion people now, demographers tell us we will reach 9 billion. And so how we use our military is always important, has always been important, but today is particularly important because the military can't solve all the problems. The problems that a military deals with today, wherever it is, in the Middle East, anywhere, are underpinned by much bigger political, social problems. My good friend Jim Clifton, who is from Nebraska, his family owns Gallup, has said over the last couple of years that much of what's going on in the world is driven by no hope, despair, and joblessness. And so when you have these 18, 19, 20-year-old young men, especially, with no prospects, no education, no jobs, no hope, what do we think is going to happen? It won't be good. And so all of these things now come together at a point where the strength of our military, just as always, must never be compromised. We must have the strongest, most sophisticated, most well-led, well-trained, motivated military ever. That alone won't fix the problems. That's a huge anchor to have, and we must have it. But economic issues and other issues factor in too. So we must use our military carefully, wisely, judiciously. And what Mike said in his very generous introduction to me, and I did say this, when I was in the Senate, I used to ask the questions, well, what's the exit strategy? I'm not the first one to talk about that. But we need to have a series of questions asked before we commit military to different adventures. Then what happens? Then what happens? It's the same set of questions that each of us in our own lives ask each other, in our personal lives every day, our business lives, whatever you do. Then what happens? Then what happens? What effect is this going to have? And this is a time now, in particular, for that kind of reflection and thinking. I'm hopeful about our world. This country, as much as people occasionally step back and wonder what's going on, has the world gone mad, everything's upside down? Well, we go through those periods in history, but when you think about America, and you think, first of all, we're rooted in a constitution that works. Balance of power, checks of power on the governing institutions. Everything about our society and our people and the fabric of our society is good, is strong. And sometimes our greatest strength appears to be a weakness, but it's not, and that is the questioning of each other, the questioning of leaders. That's healthy. It's an outlet. And, but at some point, then we've got to let our leaders govern. We have to let our leaders lead, not without question, but that's a responsibility we too have as citizens. And I would end my remarks as I began about the American Legion. The American Legion has always done that and been as responsible an institution and influential an institution as there has ever been, really, in our last 100 years. And I say that because of the way you've done it, who you represent. You've earned, through your contributions, not only the right to do that, but the responsibility to do that. At a time when every poll in the United States over the last few years shows clearly that the trust and confidence in every institution in the United States is at record lows except the military. The military is the one institution that is still very high, higher than any other institution. And so we're going through one of those periods when there is a lot of conflict, question, complication, uncertainty, but we need the strength of institutions as well, because that's another strength we have. I often in and out of Afghanistan, and one of the points I used to make with Ghani or Karzai or any of them, and with all our leaders when I was in the Senate, Secretary of Defense, is strengthen the institutions. The institutions outlive all of us. Strengthen those institutions of governance and help them build their own institutions so they can govern. Because we can't be there all over the world forever to protect everybody and do the things that we can do better than everybody else. We don't have the capacity to do that. We don't have the will to do it. We shouldn't do it. And we can't impose our will on people, but we can help them in tremendous ways. And we've done it more than any other country, I think, in the history of man. I think that's as important about our country, our heritage, and we look to the future with great hope, great confidence, and we can't lose that. We cannot lose our confidence now. Well, what I've shared are some thoughts that you all know, but I thought I'd share that with you because after almost 50 years of doing many, many things in my life, and my first real service to this country is when I went into the Army in 1967, and my brother Tom and I served together in Vietnam in 1968. And from that time on, I've done many, many things, private, public, and had the great privilege to do so many things in so many ways, and I've been very fortunate in my life. So after almost 50 years of that, you hope you're a little smarter, you hope you're a little wiser. It doesn't always work that way, but you also have a little more time to reflect on the world, where we've been, and in particular where we're going. And again, I end with where we're going really includes, maybe more than ever, the American Legion and institutions that help guide our country, not necessarily help govern it, which you do, but guide it, because it is a morality, it's an influence, it's a leadership that is reflected in everything. And I often said, politics doesn't lead anything. Politics reflects society. Politics reflects society. Anyone in politics reflects who they represent. And there are various views, you all know that, and I do too, about how to govern, how not to govern. But it's society that's the core and the fabric. And the strength of that society really determines the future of a country. And for you to help continue to build that society and knit that together at a time when there is some fraying is going to be as critical as any component of our future. So again, thank you. You've been very generous, and it's a great honor to be here, and a great honor to accept this award. And I'll continue to help the American Legion and our veterans and our country in every way I can. And again, thank you for everything you do. Have a wonderful convention. Thank you.